Okay, happy Wednesday. Earlier today, we did have a live online office hours. I didn't get a chance to do a recording during that time, as I normally do, since I was dealing with a couple of student matters. But what I'm doing today is just recording this recording in the evening. We will still have the same experience of going through kind of a nutshell version of the weekly material. Do remember though that you always have the full lecture videos on your Canvas course to refer to. So really this week we're kind of taking a little bit of a breather and reorienting our thinking. We're moving to a whole new system. So we're going to be looking at a muscle system, and we're especially looking at skeletal muscles in the next couple of weeks. Next week, we'll spend a lot of time going through the body muscle by muscle. So I am going to be honest, that's a lot of information to go through. So this week is built a little bit on a lighter side. So in case you already want to make a head start of next week's material, you are more than welcome to do so. So this week really serves as a chance to get us introduced to the muscle tissue and muscular system, whereas the next week we'll spend most of the time doing really the heavy lifting of understanding the muscles, especially the big skeletal muscles of the body. So this week is kind of giving us the background information that we need to know for that. Before getting any further, I do want to outline a little bit of a plan for these live online sessions this week. So I want to start by making sure that you do know that I am noticing that you are doing a fantastic job in this course. I know it's a lot of information to take in. I know there's always some challenges with asynchronous online classes, but this group really has risen to an occasion. I'm very, very impressed with the way you're handling the workload, the way I'm getting high quality submissions from you, the way you are engaging with the material, some even on the discussion forums. So I want to start by that. I do want to kind of highlight also the plan for the week, what type of homework assignments to expect. I think this week especially I have something new that I'm wanting to try out and see how you're enjoying it. And so I want to give a little bit of a background of that as well. The bulk of this session for me was planned on spending reviewing the key points of the muscular system as it comes to getting us oriented with the material. And I'm always open if there is a desire to have a look of the homework, we can do so. But more often than not, we've noticed that at this point of the course, you have a very good understanding what to expect in terms of that. So we'll just play it by the ear. As always, these sessions, even though I offer them in this format as well, they are anticipated and intended to be chances for you to get whatever you want out of these. So do not hesitate if you have thoughts how you would like us to spend this time differently. I am very much open for it. So like I said, I wanted to start this session by making sure that you hear me loud and clear. It is sometimes in these online settings hard to ensure that everyone hears it, but I want you to know that I see the great work you're putting in this course. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate each one of you for being part of this course. It really is a collective effort. It is a community, and I think we're seeing great discussions, great interactions, for example, on those discussion forums. Remember, that's not required. This is an asynchronous course. I only require you to do what's listed on the syllabus as the assignments. I offer multiple other additional things, but they are additional things. But I do want to give a huge shout out and applaud for anyone who has engaged into dialogue on those discussion forums as well. But just as much as that, I do appreciate you staying on top of your workload, you sending in your work, and that work being such a high standard. It really is a testament for your ability to manage your time And those are some of the things that our employers are looking. So after having completed an asynchronous course, you can definitely talk about that if it comes up, for example, in job search, how you are a self-starter, how you're capable of managing your own timelines on your own schedules, staying on top of that, even with the lack of the traditional classroom where the teacher is breathing down your neck and making sure that you get everything in. Even though I do try to reach out to you if I notice patterns or concerns, I really do have to say on this class, I haven't had to do that kind of a reaching out in sense of that I have a concern. I've done more of reaching out to tell that you're doing amazing. So I see you. I appreciate you. I'm very, very grateful for each and every one of you for being part of this class. And I want you to know that you do need to take a moment to also congratulate yourself for that, for the great work that you're doing. So I do want to be also transparent. I think I mentioned in passing in the past, I myself do go to school at the same time as doing this as a full-time job. So this week especially is a little bit of challenging for me in terms of managing my own workload. I have a couple of big essays due for my own schooling and so on. So I do want to be upfront and honest with you this week. I have a little bit of a longer than usual response time for messages, but I will get back to each one of you. I anticipate that all of that is over by the end of the week. The heavy lifting for me, probably throughout the weekend, I'll be still writing my own essays. But if you don't hear back from me and it's urgent, do not hesitate sending that message again. And if you don't hear back from me and it's not urgent, you can rest assured that I will respond. It is just taking me a little longer than normal at the moment. And I do sincerely apologize for that, but I do want to be transparent and model to you that I also own up to that. So just sharing that so you know what to expect this week. I've been kind of in my more live sessions where I have a greater participation using a fantastic book from an author, Pueblo. The book is called Inward, and it really includes these kind of thoughts that we've used as the starters for our conversations. And we've been doing that students choose which thought they want to hear. Since I'm doing this recording by myself, I don't have live audience. I have just picked a random page before we started, and I wrote down that thought there. So the thought said, I gathered my habits and started releasing the ones that can never lead me to lasting freedom and joy. And I think that what that thought really tells us is that if we relate it to our online course, it is all about finding those good study habits, finding the times when it works for you to do the work and maybe not leaving it to the last minute, getting rid of those habits that bring you distress or unhappiness, and really finding that. I think that one of the big things in these classes, more than just you learning every single bone or every single muscle in the body, it is for you to learn those skills that are transferable skills when you enter to the workforce, or even if you're already on the workforce, that you can talk about. And those self-regulation, self-management skills are something that, like I said, I'm definitely seeing in this group. You are doing amazingly on that. So that's a good thought for us to orientate ourselves for this week. I also wanted to highlight a little bit of the assignments that I have planned for this week. This week, I have 3 pieces of homework for us. I have a traditional quiz for the chapter that we go through, and we've been doing those before. Similarly, I have the practice anatomy assignment, and we've been doing those as well before. Something new that I'm introducing this week is simulation. So you'll be using the publisher's platform to run a simulation, which really gives you kind of a virtual lab experience of looking at electrical simulation of skeletal muscle, or electrical stimulation of skeletal muscle. So I think it will be a fun experience. All of these assignments are due at the end of the week. I believe it's going to be 20th, but don't hold me on that date. I might have misread it. But on Sunday night, 1 minute before midnight, is when I'm expecting these assignments to be submitted. So if you get challenges or issues with the simulation, especially, don't hesitate to let me know. I've heard from a few students it's a little different way of working, so it might take a little bit of working with your browser as well to make sure that it's running nicely, things are working the way you expect to see them on those. If there's big hiccups, big issues, please do let me know. I'll try to troubleshoot with you. I'll get you in touch with the publisher's IT team. But most students who have had some hiccups have been able to figure those out by refreshing the page, making sure that you're using Chrome browser, making sure that you have the newest version of that. Don't use a mobile device, don't use your mobile phone or Padlet. They typically are not as well adapted as the laptops or desktop computers. If you do not have an access to a laptop, do remember that our college does have loaner laptops available for you. So you can go to one of our libraries at the Chandler Gilbert if you're a registered student, and we will loan you a laptop for a semester. So that's an option as well. If you haven't already had a chance to do so, do consider that. So let's get to the reviewing of the learning material a little bit. And I guess one of the questions that my students asked, why do we need to learn about muscular system? Well, muscular system really forms about half of your body mass. So definitely a system that we need to learn about. And what we see on this slide and what I'm wanting to highlight is really that what we use our muscular system for is transferring the chemical energy that's stored in the energy in the food that we consume, especially in sugars, and convert that then into energy in a cellular level, which is our ATP. And this is where our muscular system steps in. Our muscular system converts that chemical energy, the ATP, into movement, mechanical energy, movement or force that we generate. And that's all about what our muscular system is. So I really wanted to kind of highlight what I want us to talk about, talking a little bit about different types of muscle tissues. I think this is familiar to you already. We'll talk also about muscle characteristics, or characteristics of the muscle tissue, really, and then some of the functions of the muscle as well. So that kind of forms as a nice outline what we want to cover. When we talk about muscles, you might see many different terms with kind of few different prefixes being used, whether it's myo, whether it's meso or sacro. Those all refer to muscles. I think the word muscle really comes from Latin language for the word mus, that refers to a little mouse. Early days when we weren't as far with our understanding of the microscopic structure of muscles, the people were fascinated how muscles created movement, and I guess there was some misconception that there would be little mices doing that movement. Now we see that it's actin and myosin filaments that are really rather than the mouses within your muscles, but we see that there was some understanding behind that as well. I also wanted to put things in a bigger picture of talking about different muscle tissue types that we had. We will be focusing on this and next chapter on the skeletal muscles. If we look at a single skeletal muscle cell, these are cylindrical in shape. They do have striations, and we also see multiple nuclei on these skeletal muscle cells. And sometimes my students ask, how is this possible that I thought that there was only one nucleus per cell? Well, what we see that skeletal muscle cells, adult skeletal muscle cells, are actually formed by fusing together multiple cells. So we see multiple cells nucleus also present on those. Usually those nuclei are on the peripheries of the skeletal muscle cells as well. Remember, skeletal muscle cells are the cells and the tissues that form the big muscles that generate movements in our body. So we'll be talking about those next week, those larger muscles. And we also see that skeletal muscle cells are under our voluntary control. So you get to choose a movement. Now I'm moving this muscle, now I'm not. So you have very much of a regulation over those. Even though we won't be focusing on those muscle types, I do want to mention them. So we'll be looking at cardiac muscle tissue later on in your studies on BIO202 course when we talk about heart. We see that cardiac muscle cells were branched cells, and they also had those special adaptations at the end of those branches known as intercalated discs. These branches and intercalated discs really tell us about the function of the cardiac muscle cells. We want all of the cardiac muscle cells on the same area to contract simultaneously so we can create those pumping movements of the heart. So the intercalated discs facilitate easy passage of materials and messages, and that's how we spread it to multiple cells around that cell. We'll see cardiac muscle cells they are known as uninucleated, so they have one nucleus. The nucleus is typically central, and they do have striations. Cardiac muscle cells are involuntary. You don't need to think about having a heartbeat. It will just happen. And finally, our smooth muscle cells. Smooth muscle cells look more of kind of rounded blobs. They can change shape as they contract as well. They do not have striations. They do have one central nucleus. We find smooth muscle cells, for example, around the blood vessels, also within our digestive tract, forming especially regulating the passage of materials through there. Smooth muscle as well, involuntary. You do not need to think about your blood vessel diameter regulating that. That happens automatically. Same for your digestive system. So your intestines. So that's a kind of a reminder of where we are with what we already know. And like I said, we'll be focusing on the skeletal muscles. Some characteristics of the muscle tissue, I think these are worthwhile for us to notice. We see that there's really four main characteristics of a muscle. And this is only body tissue with properties of these. So we see that muscle tissue is excitable, or irritable is the other word that sometimes get used. That means simply that it responds to stimuli. We also say that muscle tissues are contractile. So that means that the muscles shorten, so they contract when stimulated. At this point, I should probably mention that do notice that muscle is still working, even though it might not be shortening in length or expanding in length. So for example, if you hold a heavy weight for a long time, let's say a gallon of water or this jar that I have on my hand, my muscles are still doing work to hold it up, even though we're not seeing that active change in the length of those muscles. So that's something to keep in mind about that contractility as well. Muscles are also extensible, so they can be stretched in response to force. And finally, we see that muscles have elasticity, so they recoil, they return to their original or resting length when the force stretching them is removed. So important characteristics worthwhile for us to have a look in that sense. I often, when we talk about muscles and we talk about training muscular system, what I emphasize to my students is that it's all about the technique and training them sensibly and smartly. Here, a quote that I often use for my students is to highlight that instructing a patient or a person you're, for example, training in an exercise that does not follow the line of pull will be less effective, but it could also place additional stress on and damage tissues or on damaged tissues if you're doing physios work. So when you're looking for a person who knows what they're doing in terms of personal training, in terms of training muscles, some of the themes that I would expect to hear is talking about, for example, training your core, training those important muscles. I do want to show a little bit of the wrong training and some of the consequences of that on the next slide. If you do get easily squeamish, you can skip the next slide, next few moments of this video. But I want to show you what can happen if you don't have a good technique in weight training, or you are overtraining. Usually muscles come in pairs and you're only training one side of that pair of the muscles. Well, consequences can be quite dramatic. You can end up even breaking your bones with the force of the muscles if they are imbalanced, as we're seeing on this runner. So often we talk about, for example, flexors and extensors, and we want to train them equally. So one pair of the muscle, it doesn't get too strong in relation to its opposing muscle. So what I wanted to do next, I wanted to talk really briefly about functions of muscular system. We're seeing two functions. First one that I've listed there is the movement. So muscles do produce movement. They produce locomotion. They help us to manipulate things. So we see things like walking, digestion, even pumping blood. It doesn't have to be just physical movement. It can be movement for other body functions. I also wanted to mention how muscles play an important role in your posture and body position maintenance of those. So even to stay still is a lot of work. I often ask my students in a class at this time to stand up on one leg, and we're seeing that it's really an interplay between muscular system and nervous system, and it is constant adjusting, constant changing, constant responding to maintain that position. In addition, muscles do help us to stabilize our joints. So we covered first the skeletal system, and now we're covering the muscular system, because really muscles have to attach to bones, and we're seeing in that sense that they work in pairs, they work in tandem. Final thing that I wanted to talk about in this context is the heat production role of the muscles. Whenever we convert energy from one form to another, as we saw in case of the muscles converting that chemical energy into movement, for example, we lose some of the energy, and typically we lose that as heat. That's why when you're exercising, going to the gym, you get warm, and then we bring that heat to the body surfaces and, for example, sweat it out. But we can use this also beneficially. For example, if you're in a cold environment and you start to shiver, that's your muscles working, not really producing a purposeful movement of moving you along the way, but to produce heat as a byproduct of that. But we do see many other functions for the muscular system as well, protecting organs, forming valves, regulating those, controlling pupil size, goosebumps. I think we talked about the erector pili, one of the smallest muscles in your body earlier on this course. So now that we've had a look of those, let's kind of pay a little bit of attention to the skeletal muscle anatomy. So skeletal muscle is an organ made of different tissues, and we will see that in a skeletal muscle, we'll find a nerve supplied there to send those commands to the muscles, what movements they should do. Also blood supply to provide oxygen, provide nutrients, remove carbon dioxide, waste products, and so on. We'll end up seeing a lot of connective tissue layers, kind of bundling, packing those structures of the skeletal muscle, and also the attachments to the bones or elsewhere. So let's have a look of an example of that. What we're seeing here is how muscle is formed from multiple muscle fibers that they are then wrapped in a connective tissue. Those come together within the endomuseum, and then multiple of these bundles get packed together to form within a perimuseum fascicle that's wrapped in a perimuseum. The multiple of those fascicles get packed together, wrapped in epimuseum, forming the muscle. So we're seeing this multi-level anatomical structure, connective tissue holding those together. And in that picture, you even see the muscle attaching to the bone with the connective tissue there as well. I do want to mention at this point also the concept of attachments. Muscles do attach to typically to bones, usually on two sides of a joint. So we can move that joint. A lot of textbooks spend a lot of time talking about organs and insertions. Organs are usually more proximal attachments to immovable or less movable portions, whereas insertions are typically more distal attachment points to movable bones, movable parts. Textbooks really love to talk about origins and insertions. I really want you to know the attachment points, whether you call it an origin or insertion. I don't mind about that too much. The big message is here that we can learn about this, that muscles work as levelers. So they produce movement by connecting to different parts. And here I actually do have an illustration of that. So you notice how we can use levelers in a very clever way to amplify the force that we put in, like in this picture, that a man lifting a heavy stone through the pivot point being close to the heavy stone. Similarly, we see sometimes muscles capitalizing on this by having connective tissues creating levelers for causing those movements. So we're able to do that. And I do have here some examples. It really becomes down to the fact that how far apart the origin and insertion are, that how big of a mechanical advantage we see. And this is really a field known as articulation biomechanics, which is something that you can go on and study more if that's something of an interest for you. At this point of our review, I do want to mention a little bit about the microanatomy of the muscles, and let's have a look of also sliding filament model. So skeletal, as we saw, the skeletal muscle fibers are these long cylindrical cells that contain multiple nuclei, and we will zoom in now and study their structures further. It will zoom in within one sarcomere, and we see that really the plasma membrane of a muscle fiber defines that. So here we do have sacroplasm, the cytoplasm of a muscle, and if we look, we have something known as myofibrils. These are many rod-like elements. Actually, 80% of the muscle's volume is going to be that. So now let's have a look into an individual myofibril and what's going on in there. And we're seeing these sarcomeres, like I said, a single blob between one Z discs and another Z discs would be one sarcomere. We're seeing their actin and myosin filaments, and it is really those filaments that slide past each other as muscle shortens and lengthens. So it is this sliding filament model that's used to explain that. And again, in lecture material, you can dive in more detail of this. But another thing that I wanted to highlight here is that if we look at these areas where actin and myosin overlap greatly, those are not going to let light go through as easily as those areas where we have then only one layer of these. Those let light a lot more past. And this is the explanation why we see these striations in the muscles, both within the skeletal muscles and cardiac muscles. It is really all to do with how much light is being let through these actin and myosin arrangements. So what we're seeing there. And I think that here I have a better picture of that. On the right-hand side, I actually have an electron microscope image to try to convince you that what I'm showing as sketches is not made up. So we're seeing those actin and myosin filaments. We see typically that myosin is thicker, actin a little thinner, but in order for the movement to happen, these filaments slide past each other. And there's these little leg-like structures from the myosin filaments that move against the actin filament and cause the muscle to then lengthen or shorten. And what I have a demonstration of that there next is the sliding filament model of a muscle that's elongated on the left-hand side and muscle that's shorter on the right-hand side. And we're really seeing them sliding past each other. Interestingly, when one passes away, these little legs between actin and myosin actually gets locked in by calcium, and you get the rigor mortis. And I do think that I talk about that also in my full lecture videos. I'll mention it also a little later here as well. In addition to that sliding filament model, I wanted to highlight at this point also the neuromuscular junction. So we're seeing that nerve cells pass these messages to the muscles that now it's time to contract. So there is that interplay of these systems that we've talked about as well, and we will talk about. So regulating, sending commands to the muscles to do their thing. And I'm going to finish off this review with this slide of rigor mortis. I used to have a picture of a person who has passed away showing how these muscles really become hard. and can carry even the person's weight as we lift them. That is one sign and symptom as we're trying to age the how long ago the individual passed away. If in the interest of being polite and not upsetting anyone on this YouTube video, I'm not including that picture, but if you want to look through the full lecture material on Canvas course, I do have some examples of that as well. That was again because the calcium locked the actin and myosin fibers together, so now muscles become strong as bone. So that brings us to the end of this review of the most important items of this week's learning material. I think that for the interest of time, also in the interest of me going to home and getting some sleep, we're not going to review the homework any further than that. Like I said, there is that simulation. Give yourself some time to play around with it, enjoy it. I want you to have as much of the similar experiences as my in-person students would have, even though this is a virtual class. So that's why I'm creating those as well. As always, please do let me know how I can help you. Even though this week is very busy for me, it doesn't mean that I wouldn't be here for you. This is really a team effort, working together, these online classes. So let me know how I can assist you. And that really brings me to the end of this presentation. As always, I appreciate you and I look forward to another great week of working with you. I look forward to seeing you in our online spaces. I look forward to seeing the great work that I know that you will keep submitting, and I hope you have a great week. Until our next chance to interact, that's it from me. Have a good night and have a good week. Thank you and bye.